Okay, amazing. So, can you tell me a little bit about how YSpace originated and like what the mission is of YSpace, how you're trying to change the world?
Yeah. How are we changing the world? So YSpace is a university-backed incubator slash accelerators. So we operate under York University. We're a completely nonprofit organization. And, that's really amazing because we get to work with um, entrepreneurs without any strings attached. So our core mandate is to support the development of startups. There are a few core areas that we focus on. So we have a portfolio under food and beverage, so CPG based companies. We have a very active portfolio under technology ventures. And then we have two diversity focused streams. So one that focuses on women led ventures and one that focuses on Black entrepreneur led ventures as well. So in the way that we operate, we don't have to support just the York University students or direct kind of affiliates. So we've been able to build a community that's broader than the community that we're already a part of. So that's been exciting for YSpace as a whole. So to answer ultimately, how are we looking to change the world? I think our job is to be the platform that empowers people to change the world.
Mm.
So we are hoping to be there on day one. When a founder comes to us with like, hey, this is this crazy idea that is going to change the way that we engage with the internet or with cars or whatever those ideas are. We want to be there day one with these entrepreneurs and be that supporting kind of guiding hand that helps them, figure out how they can turn that into execution. And obviously, as they go on through the later stages of our program, how they can start scaling that up. So that's how we see ourselves, playing that part. And then, sorry, just remind me your first question again.
Just the origin story,
Yeah.
which I think you kind of covered, but you can go deeper if you like.
Yeah. I mean, the origin story really started approaching 5 years now with YSpace, but it started with actually David Kwok and Sarah Howe, who were part of the leadership team. They saw this opportunity with York University building a community in Markham, actually. And they saw an opportunity to turn this as a hub for entrepreneurship. And that's evolved into what YSpace is now, going from just the single space hub to 14 plus programs, multiple sites, even international partnerships that we've been able to create. So that's the origin story. It goes back to the core of us wanting to be the platform to support entrepreneurs.
And in terms of your team, specifically in YSpace, like how many team members are you and what are like the different roles?
I think we're at about 10 team members currently. So we have and kind of umbrella. So we report to David Kwok, and then every there are entrepreneurship managers that report up, but they own a different portfolio. So I more closely own the technology portfolio and any kind of special projects on top. And then we have other members that own the three other portfolios that I mentioned earlier.
Okay, cool. And in terms of the business model of your, I guess we'll call it a learning community, what is it? Is it folks are paying for courses? Is it like a membership?
Yeah, so we don't, because we're a nonprofit institution, we don't take equity out of any of the companies that come into to our programs, which is again another one of those positive things. 90% of our programs are completely free. So there is a competitive process. So you have to apply, you have to go to a steering committee, pitching and all of that fun stuff to qualify. Once you do qualify, 90% of our programs are completely free. There are two programs that are more on the long-term incubation front that does have a membership fee associated with it. But again, it doesn't go towards any profit. It just goes back towards maintaining the community and the resources that we pull together. And then aside from that, we partner with either corporate partners or the government grant funding. This is how we've been able to accelerate some of the other aspects of growth.
Okay, great. So in a way, it's like the application is the filter for which you understand how invested and committed individuals or a group are. And then after that point, you're providing them with access and resources and like the peer to peer connection, but they're not necessarily like paying out of pocket.
Yeah. So the membership fee aspect of it, it's just like a per company fee that we charge.
Right.
But again, we know building a startup, how financially difficult it is. So we always work with the company to make sure that we're always obtaining good talent within our community.
Yeah. And you don't provide any funding opportunities, right? It's specifically education and community. Yeah. As an incubator, do you also like provide funding or strictly education and community?
No, so there are a couple key things that we do. Mentorship and education is huge. We're very core focused on mentorship. We do tap into other resources. So because we're a campus linked accelerator, there's certain funding opportunities that our members get direct access to, whether it's with OCI or some other government level funding. We try to pull all these resources together and create access to them. We also work with our founders on their capital strategy. For any of the startups that are looking to go the fundraising route, we work with them in-house in terms of the strategy and connections, building their roadmap and all of the pieces that go towards being investment ready. So in fact, our accelerator program has a very intensive framework around how we get our founders to be capital ready.
Mhm. The actual accelerators and programs themselves, like how do you approach the design of the experiences? Is there someone that like takes on that role or, yeah, design the session?
Yeah, it's a great question. It's usually led by who's leading that portfolio. So I could speak to, the technology portfolio, depending on the stage and which program specifically it is. We come up with some initial learning objectives in terms of if a startup is going through a 4-month program, what are the major value proposition, right, for them to go through our program? So we start by defining that as a first step. And then we work it into the more grassroots level. So what are resources? What are different speaker sessions or mentorship hours, whatever those additional layers, resources that they need in order to be able to achieve those goals. So we're very goal centric in the way that we work with our ventures, where they define their goals and then we support them along the way. And we try to do the same thing when we design the programs. So we try to define those goals and then build it based on that. And we're constantly taking feedback from our communities. I think that's the next piece around it is where we operate just like a startup where things evolve, our founders evolve, the way that they're engaging with content has significantly evolved in the last 3 years. So we're constantly taking that feedback and incorporating that into the way that we design our programs every year.
Hmm. And can you just share with me the number of programs, how long they are, how many times they run a year, and how many members you typically have in each?
Sure. Yeah. So we have an early stage program for just kind of that ideation stage, kind of helping them validate and getting something into the market or into the hands of their MVP user group. So that program is called Venture Catalyst that operates twice a year. So every fall and every winter, we run through that program. Typically, we'll see around 30 to 40 early stage ventures that go through that. We have an ongoing incubation program. So this is kind of where we see more as a life cycle program. Once you get to a certain stage of working through go to market and development and building some traction, you kind of start getting ready to qualify for the incubation program. The max incubation period for that is about 2 years. And we work between that stage. So that's an ongoing intake of ventures. And then we have our accelerator program that focuses really on the market ready. You have a product you're selling, you need to build the playbook around how to sell and how to scale this or be ready for scale. So that's a program that we run over the summer between May to August every year. And that takes in about 15 to 20 ventures. And that operates over the 4 months. Over the year, we get the anywhere between 70 to 100 ventures that go through our programming.
Right?
Usually our primary engagement is with the founders. It'd be,
It's like 70 to 100 members.
yeah. Plus, if they incorporate their teams into the programming, we're always open to that as well. But our primary engagement is with the founders. And this is just a technology portfolio that I haven't touched the other ones yet.
Tell me more about the other one, if you have that.
Well, food side, we have a similar framework where There's an early stage program that operates every fall and winter. Um, I think they take in between 10 to 15 ventures per cohort. There's an ongoing intake of incubated food companies. And then there's also the accelerator program, which also
Mhm.
covers, I think, just around 15 or so ventures over the summer. So there's a food side. And then we have our women-led ventures. They have 3 tiers of programming. And then same with the Black Entrepreneurship program, where we focus on 2 tiers of programming under food and 2 tiers of programming under tech. So I think in a given year, we're definitely seeing at least 100 to 150 ventures that go through our programming as a whole.
Yeah, amazing. And in terms of alumni, do you have like a big alumni community?
Yeah, totally. I think we're at like 400 plus. We're actually at 500 plus ventures that we've supported since our inception.
Yeah.
The startup life cycle means that there will be those that continue making it and those that decide to pursue other options. We keep in constant touch with those that are active and any other ways that we can support them or invite them out to our events. We do a lot of community building. On top of that, we definitely keep track of all alumni companies, try to be a part of them, their family, or them being a part of our family, even beyond their engagement.
And I guess like in terms of how you would attract these ventures, like what is the marketing approach? How do you get them to learn about YSpace and to enroll them into the programs?
Yeah. We always have a marketing campaign, which is awesome. I would say personally, some of the most fruitful recruitment tactics have been when we get to the grassroots level and really connect with the founders and build a relationship before they even start engaging with YSpace. Um, so whether that's led through one of us or through the broader community of other stakeholders, other folks that we tap into, whether it's the venture capital community or other networks, we tap into them and help them create those one-to-one connections with us. Personally, I'm a big fan of that. I think that creates a lot more qualified engagement in terms of the recruitment cycle. One thing that we're super mindful of is when it comes to diversity and inclusion, we want that to be a benchmark and a core of our programming rather than an additional, oh, FYI, we need to do this. For us, we always want to make sure that we're the ones building the pipelines rather than blaming that there isn't a pipeline. So whether it's tapping into, these specific organizations or channels that tap into other diverse networks that we're not a part of or part and core to the way that we approach recruitment.
I really appreciate how intentional you are about that. I think sometimes if you just put something out there and you're not being intentional, then you're not actually meeting your EDI goals. So that's great. And I'm
Yeah,
it's a lot more effort.
I mean, it doesn't, right? It's really important to our leadership. It's important to us. We're all bought into why this is important. So when you're bought in and you have the same goals, it doesn't feel as hard because you do care about it.
Yeah, that's true. I think it's hard when there isn't alignment internally.
Right.
Then there's a lot more emotional labor for sure. In terms of a referral program, is there anything that you've created specifically to have like alumni bring in new members or even your network? Is there any kind of engine that you've built over the years?
Yeah, I would say every time we start a recruitment cycle, we tap into our alumni. So we kindly ask them to reshare, the opportunity within their network and also equally creating those one-to-one connections within their network. We try to make the task as easy as possible in terms of our alumni because we know they're very busy. So, we have kind of a templated approach in terms of marketing documents and marketing collateral pieces that we can send out to them to make it really easy. I think core to it is we continue keeping that relationship going with our alumni. So that ask doesn't become as hard when we still try to keep building value for them even beyond their engagement with us. So, that's the secret sauce, which is not really a secret sauce.
And you incentivize them like in any way, like with monetarily or with like additional mentorship opportunities or
No, so no monetary incentivization in terms of additional mentorship. That's always there. If an alumni that graduated 2 years ago or 5 years ago, they come to me and they're like, "Hey, I need support with this." it's a no-brainer. We're going to help them regardless. So that's just built into the way that we try to engage with our alumni.
What's your vision for growing YSpace? Like, where do you see it in the next few years? And how do you want to continue to make an impact?
I think the vision is always to be the best, right? But I say that with the caveat of like there are some really amazing accelerator programs and incubator programs, and for us, it's always understanding that every program will have different values. So whatever we set our values in terms of being the best in terms of that, and creating the most seamless founder engagement in the way that they go through our programming. So making sure that all the accelerator or incubator programs are operating seamlessly. It is a service business at the end of the day. So the founders come out of it feeling like they got 110% of the values in terms of what their expectations were, and keeping that going. We want to grow the brand. We want to grow YSpace, where personally, I think there's a really, really awesome opportunity right now to scale the way that we do our programming to be beyond just a GTA hub. So being able to work with some of the international partners that we worked with and creating more opportunities with that. And even beyond GTA, we just recently opened a hub in Georgina and East Gwillimbury. So looking at some of these northern regions or more remote regions that have been underserved in terms of entrepreneurship. So our goal is to just keep doing what we're doing, but amplifying that, that much more. I think at least in the next couple of years, that's the next goal. And making sure that no matter what we do, we always have that founder first approach and keep building value in all aspects of our programming.
Well, I have no doubt you're going to reach all of those goals. Well, and plenty, I'm sure. You know what? It's okay. We're just publishing this for everyone to see. So no big deal.
I mean, I'll tell you my personal goal. The reason I do what I do at YSpace is to eventually be able to democratize entrepreneurship. And I think if we do what we're doing, we get to that level. I personally believe that entrepreneurship has that power to unlock generational wealth, unlock access to networks, unlock a lot of privileges that people haven't had access to from all different sorts of communities. So I think the more we could democratize access to entrepreneurship, the more we could democratize or at least buy back some of that privilege for a lot of the communities that haven't had traditionally access to that.
I think one of the reasons I feel very aligned with Disco is because I'm like, oh, this is a platform that's going to enable that, bringing together people for lifelong learning. And, the institutions are, I mean, it's interesting because you're kind of under an institution, you operate within an institution, but they haven't like historically been very accessible and diverse. And I think things have shifted over the past few decades, but generally I just think that like, even just the idea of having like global communities, global learners, being able to meet from different countries and just like, climate justice and essentially like being able to access the same education or better for a much more affordable price and maybe even in less time, because as we know, like institutional education can take a really long time. And oftentimes, depending on your lived experience or your economic position, like you might not be able to spend 4 years in an undergrad, but you really need those technical skills. So just find it very exciting. The whole movement feels really exciting to me.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I had this conversation with one of our founders about how education is and how education could be. I think the way that we learn has changed. All of these institutional in different ways, right? So I do think the future of education looks very different in 10 to 15 years than the way that we've traditionally always engaged with it. It's probably another reason why I love using this code.
I'm going to kind of switch gears a little bit and focus more on the platform. If there's anything else in between these questions that you feel called to sharing, of course, the space is yours. But I'm just always so curious to understand how people are actually using the platform. And we obviously have a vision for it, but it's always amazing to be able to have the reflection back of how it's impacting your world and your day to day. When you were looking for a platform initially, what were some of the challenges or problems that you were looking to solve with a platform?
Yeah, I mean, the first set of challenge was we were building content continuously And we didn't really have a centralized way to manage the content to make it accessible to our founders. We have a lot of founders that engage with different sorts of content. So we needed to find something that was centralized and that created a intuitive user experience for our. There were a couple great options. I think ultimately Disco just aligned really well in terms of some of the features that they were offering. The easiness of using Disco was something that we really aligned with early.
What were you using before Disco, or are there tools that you're still using today with Disco?
Yeah, most of our content are recorded through Zoom. Before Disco, Zoom recordings that we were trying to get set up on YouTube or send out links to them. We eventually transferred out to Notion, which was great, but also limited in terms of what we could really do with it in terms of a true learning management system as a whole. So Notion was the last one that we tried, and then we made the jump to Disco, which just made it really easy for us to manage cohorts and manage the different programming elements, but also make sure that all of those values when we're designing the programs, we're able to align that and really use Disco as a tool that makes our life easier in terms of managing that.
Yeah. And in terms of how you stumbled upon Disco, was it a referral? Did someone reach out to you?
I think it was a Google search.
Do you remember what you
Yeah.
were searching for?
I'm pretty sure I typed in like a learning management system and, like D2L came up and a couple others came up and none of them really just worked out for me. I kept trying different trials and I just landed on this code. I wish I remembered exactly what it was. I landed on it and I was like, this kind of works.
Yeah, it was more in
Yeah,
line with what you had pictured.
exactly.
So then what was the tipping point? Why did you ultimately choose Disco as your platform?
To scale, we were growing. We have all these programs. They needed a centralized way to engage. Different managers were doing different hacks to centralize the content. And, ultimately, we tested it out with one of our programs just to see if it actually works. And now we're at a stage where we've incorporated multiple of our programs all under the one platform. So for us, it was to enable scaling with the different programs. And also, I think even though we're a team of 10, we're a very small team. So ultimately, enabling our team to maximize the way that we support our ventures. I think we shouldn't be spending hours dealing with the platform or dealing with the content where the best value is when we're working with the founders and working on their challenges. So trying to standardize a lot of those pieces were
Mhm. And what are some features that are really helping you solve some of your operational challenges?
cohort management, right? Being able to build different experiences and have different cohorts that go through it. An early stage cohort won't necessarily want the later stage content. So it's a great feature that we've been able to utilize. What else? The content, being able to upload content easily. Again, that is the core reason why we were on Disco. It's seamless enough that we don't have to think about it. That's a really quick and easy process. So being able to upload content and manage the content and the ease of how well we could do it, I think that's been great. We haven't used the community feature just as much just yet, but that's the next thing that we're going to start testing out. I think what's also been exciting is Disco has been building with us as we've been building. So, I'll give a shout out to Kat,
She's awesome.
our CS lead. She's been super engaged, keeping us looped in on new features, talking to us about what our needs are and incorporating those. So working with a good team that also gets our needs and puts that in terms of the priority has been really awesome in terms of the experience with this.
Mm, that's great. If you could quantify the number of operational hours that you're saving a week or a month, do you like give me like a rough estimate?
Oh, I have no idea. And I could give you at least from like one accelerator program perspective, maybe I could give you that. We've probably definitely saved a good 1 to 2 weeks worth of pulling things together by using Disco. So hopefully that kind of puts it into
Yeah, wow, that's a lot. If you think about like the number of, different programs and how
yeah.
often they're happening, like if you add it up, it's a lot of time.
Yeah, I mean, like over like a 5 month period, that does add up in terms of operational capacity. So that's been really awesome for us. And again, human resource, the more we're able to better use of our limited team and our limited human resources, the farther we could go in terms of programming itself.
And in terms of your member experience, so, before you were generally using Zoom and then we were looking into Notion, but like, what do you think, how has Disco impacted the experience of the learners themselves?
It's not scattered. I think, the fact that a founder can go on the platform and look up, hey, this is what I learned 4 months ago that I really need access to right now. And just having that at the tip of their fingertips, I think is a good opportunity. We're obviously still learning how to make that experience even better and even more core to the way that the founders are operating. So that's part of our learning journey right now. But I think for founders, having access to that certain level of content and resources that are also getting pulled around the content that are easily accessible for them, whether it's like 11:30 at night on a Saturday evening, or if they're traveling across the continent somewhere,
Mhm.
all of those having an easy access to that, I think is a big value add. And I think the other piece is when the programming elements are that much more organized, it's less of a headache on the founders, right? So again, it goes to the service element. The more we can make this a seamless service for the founders to engage with us and gain value from the programs and really focus on like, hey, these are 3 things I need to do in terms of my sales playbook, instead of spending 2 hours figuring out how to find the content that will help them build the sales playbook. That goes a long way, I think, in the long term of it.
Mhm. Yeah, and they can just be more focused on the community aspects and the learning as opposed to like, where do
Yeah.
I find
Yeah. Focus on their
exactly.
business, which is what they really should be spending their time on.
It's one of my favorite questions. If you had a magic wand and we could give you any 1 to 2 features like tomorrow that could solve any one of your challenges, what would they be?
I think I would love an OKR tool, like a goal setting tool. So we're very, as an incubator accelerator, we're very focused on developing individualized company goals and really setting the right milestones from the get go and then holding them accountable and working with them on that. So as they go through the content, it would equally be awesome for us to also track their goals and seeing with each goal, how are they leveling up over the period of the program. In terms of their journey that they go through with our programming, I think that would be a really awesome tool that I would love to have.
That's amazing. I think that's the first time I've heard that. Yeah.
I'm gonna
And
wait till the update from Cat.
I'm like, that might be like, a few months up, but there's so many things to prioritize. But it's really interesting to hear because every member also needs something different as well. Like, your members are different from a climate school versus like a sales school, like, so I really like that idea. Are there any other features that would be helpful to you in terms of saving time or creating a better experience for the members?
Searchable content would be cool.
Right.
I think that's something that we talked about. I think it's great, especially as we're thinking about how we use the new community features that was built. How do we just use that as a centralized way for people to find content, no matter what program that they're in or what stage that they're in? So like a searchable content directory would be really cool.
I agree. I think that especially once you start to have more resources and more courses and more codes, you want folks to be able to easily find
Mhm.
things. My last question is in terms of support that we could provide you outside of the tech itself. So, we're thinking about our learning experiences, and whether it's a mastermind or an incubator or just like workshops and guest experts we can bring in terms of a community that you and your colleagues would want to be a part of as you're building YSpace, what are some things that would be really helpful to you? What type of topics or what kinds of workshops would you want to attend? What do you want to learn more about that we can help with? Essentially
Okay.
being part of the disco community, and then within that, having access to different learning experiences and
Mm.
networking opportunities.
Yeah, I'll start with the networking. I think, our core stakeholders are startups, investors, funders of programs similar to
Mhm.
us, whether it's corporates or other governments. Any of those opportunities that are available, we're always keen. And I think, especially on the startup front, we're always recruiting, we're always looking for good talent. I would also say solving a problem for our startups is the talent gap that founders face when they are recruiting. So there are opportunities that maybe there are other programs that are doing sales development or marketing development, whatever those kind of programs are. So if there are graduates that are coming out of this program that are really good talent and need a home, I think that would be a cool opportunity for startups as a whole. In terms of learning, I think, shared best practices, right? We're constantly learning and evolving in terms of how we run our program, in terms of how we deliver great service and great value. So similar to anyone else that maybe have the best practices, do's and don'ts. I am always curious. I'm always learning around that. So I think that would be something that I'm interested in personally.
Yeah. So if we had let's say like a mastermind with other community leaders and learning leaders and founders of virtual academies and incubators, like, and you had this space to, I guess, the peer-to-peer learning, but also there were some guest experts that came in and taught specifically about how to, build a learning community, grow a learning community. That's something you'd be interested in, like, and show up for.
For sure. I think so. And I will say, I know Disco is the tech first platform. I do think there is still value in in-person engagement. So if Disco had those opportunities to create, in-person engagements as well with these different communities, I think that could also be a really cool thing.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, my background's in person, so I'm like all for that. I think that the best learning and community models are hybrid. Like I feel like pendulum swung when we were in the pandemic, but I do think that there is going to be this equilibrium where we find, okay, we don't always want to be in person for everything. It's just not sustainable. But we don't need to be remote and digital for everything, right?
Yeah.
So like what's that happy medium? So
We're definitely on that hybrid side. That could be another learning opportunity for us. We are getting into a hybrid model right now, and we see that as the way to move forward. We're figuring that out. I think a lot of people are still figuring that out as well. So that would be something that I'm really interested in learning is how do you build a hybrid model that scales? That's what.
I'm gonna write that one down. That's a good question because I've been asking myself that as well, and so I think, yeah, I think that that's everyone is essentially trying to figure that out, as we realize that, like, fully virtual is not what people want or even need, right? We need to be in spaces together.